Oh, there you are. Been looking for you. Because you know why? It's time to take our next section of notes for civics. Been wondering where you been. I've been kind of offline for a few days. It's good to see all of you back. Take good notes. This is lesson 2 of unit 2. And in lesson 1, we learned about the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. Let me quiz you a little bit on it. All right, Kaylee Taylor, name the 5 things in Amendment 1. Go. Well, I don't know. I can't hear your answer, but you should have said speech, religion, press, petition, and assembly. Let me pick on somebody else. Kayla McCune, tell me what Amendment 2 is. You got 2 arms. Right to bear arms. Let's see. Let's pick another couple. Let's just pick a couple of them out. All right, Emily Dempsey, Amendment 4, shut the door. Okay, you should have said protects American citizens from illegal searches and seizures. So that was just a little quiz. I hope you can remember all of those tricks for the first 10 amendments. We're going to get into the next 10 amendments in this little section of videos, or not the next 10 amendments, but some of the rest of the amendments added to the Constitution. Before we do, I have to activate your brain a little bit. I want to show you a picture. Most of y'all can recognize that famous president. Hopefully from Coach Halsey's class last year. You recognize him as Franklin Delano Roosevelt. President during the Great Depression, president during World War II. One of the most famous presidents we've ever had in American history. Now, I want to tell you something. This is a story about my great-grandma, Garnet Miller. Now, great-grandma Garnet Miller was probably the best cook I have ever known in my whole entire life, rest her soul. And when I was a little tiny kid, we would always, not always, but occasionally go to her house for Sunday dinner. And she would have the best spread you could ever possibly imagine, the greatest cook ever. But I noticed when I was a little kid that she had a picture of some of her relatives up on the wall. And then she also had a picture of this man. So for the longest time, I just thought he was some kind of relative. Now, I'm not making that up. She had a picture of Franklin Roosevelt on her wall. I mean, literally, there's a picture of Jesus, the Lord, up here on the wall, and then down here to the left was Franklin Roosevelt's picture. Now, I don't know. Some of you probably have pictures of Trump on your wall, President Trump. Some of you have pictures of Trump on the wall so you can throw darts at it probably. I mean, I don't really know what your political affiliation is, but I asked Grandma Garnet Miller as a kid that one Sunday, I said, Grandma Garnet, who's that picture there? Who's in that picture? And this lovely lady was about 4 foot tall and 4 foot around, and she put her arm around me and she pointed up to that picture and she said, that there, Sonny, is Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the greatest president we've ever had. True story. Had a picture of him on the wall. Now that's something we don't see today. You don't walk down the hallway of your house and have pictures of your kids, your grandparents, your family. Trump right there. We don't see that today, but Grandma Garnet kept a picture of Franklin Roosevelt there. Now, why did I tell you that story? Because when we get to Amendment 22, we're going to talk about Franklin Roosevelt. So, I want you to take out your notes. You have to continue to take very good notes. So, let's go to these notes at this time. I'm going to shrink this back down and we're going to slide down to EQ number 2. EQ number 2 says the other amendments. Now we're going to pick out some of these amendments from 11 to 27, and we're going to pick out some of the most important ones and talk to you about them. Now, one of the things I want you to remember is Amendment 13 and 14 and 15 are all related. They're kinfolk. It's kinfolk. I was getting Shermace. Hey, Shermace. Hope you're watching the video. I was getting Shermace registered to vote. I needed his physical address. And he said, and I don't remember the exact address, but I live on 32 Kinfolk Road. I think it was Shermace. Kinfolk Road. That's where all the kinfolk live, I guess. I don't know, but it made me laugh. Because in West Virginia, we use that word a lot. We're all kinfolk, all the relatives. So remember that Amendment 13, 14, and 15 are all related. Now, how so? Well, let's take a look. Amendment 13 is probably one of the most famous amendments ever because it was after the Civil War and our country abolished slavery. Now, why do I have a skeleton right there? Well, all of us probably have some skeletons in our closet, things that we've done in the past. We brush in the closet and try to hide them. America as a country is no different. And the skeleton that's in our closet was the fact that we used the institution of slavery in the South, not only in colonial times, but in the first part of America's existence. And you learned in the last lesson that amendments are changes, additions to the Constitution. It allows us as a country to fix things, you know? And Amendment 13 fixed something for us because we abolished this horrible institution of slavery and got rid of it. Amendment 13 did away with this inhumane act of slavery in our country. It's a skeleton in our closet, but we fixed it. We got it right with Amendment 13. We did away with it. Slavery no longer allowed, and rightfully so. That's why Amendment 13 is so important. And Amendment 14 is related to that because then we granted equality to all U.S. citizens, whether you were a black American, a white American, all U.S. citizens. It gives equality to all of us. Amendment 14 is pretty long. It's one of the longest amendments. And in fact, in Obergefell versus Hodges, Georgia, Obergefell, the very famous gay marriage Supreme Court case, they utilized and went to Amendment 14 as the basis to make gay marriage legal because all citizens should have equality. Doesn't matter who you are, equal opportunity. Amendment 14. And then Amendment 15 comes next in our history because then Amendment 15, it decided to give, or we as a country changed again for the good and gave black males the right to vote. So Amendment 13, 14, and 15 are related. First of all, we got rid of this horrible institution of slavery. We gave equality to everyone. And in Amendment 15, we give black males the right to vote. Now, unfortunately, Jim Crow laws and voting laws still, were very prevalent in the South. You learned in Coach Halsey's class last year that people tried to have literacy tests and pay a poll tax to get to vote. They were doing that to keep black people from voting. And it was very discriminatory. And we finally got those things out of the way too, because they're very unfair. But you learned about that last year in Coach Halsey's class. But those three amendments, Amendment 13 got rid of slavery, Amendment 14 gives citizenship and equality to all Americans, and Amendment 15 gave black males the right to vote. Those were all very good fixes. But if you're sitting there as a lady, you're saying, well, what about black women? Well, at this time in American history, no women could vote. But we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. Some of you have been working hard at your jobs, getting those paychecks. You see all those taxes taken out. You're going to have to file taxes. You're going to have to file for your tax return. Welcome to adulthood. Amendment 16, and I'll pull it up here. No one likes Amendment 16 added to the Constitution. This was done when Woodrow Wilson was president. Oh, there's a paycheck. Oh boy, I bet you'd like to have that much money, wouldn't you, Emily Dempsey? Well, the Amendment 16 gives the government the power to tax your incomes. It's the famous income tax amendment. But unfortunately, our government needs money to run itself, and they're going to take taxes out of your income to help do that. Amendment 16 allows the government to tax your income. It's probably not your favorite amendment, but it's there. Let's move on down to Amendment 17. Amendment 7 gave Americans the right in the Bill of Rights to sue in civil court over money and property. So Amendment 7 is civil court. Amendment 17 has to deal with senators. Amendment 17 allows for the direct election of senators by the people. That would be me and you. We're the people. Let me explain. Before Amendment 17, your senators in West Virginia were chosen by your state legislature. They chose who was going to be the senator. But because of Amendment 17, now we get to vote. We get to vote for our own senators as a people, as a group, not to have our state legislature decide who it's going to be. So we get to vote for Shelley Capito. We get to vote for Joe Manchin if you want to. This is an important amendment because it puts the senator's election directly in the hands of us, the people. Now, we go to Amendment 18. Now, I'm going to put this on the screen for you. Amendment 18, you learned about this last year with Coach Halsey in the 20s, the famous Prohibition Amendment. It became a big, hot topic in the 20s, but Prohibition was added to the Constitution. What it did was it made alcohol illegal. Here were the things that Prohibition prohibited. You couldn't make alcohol, you couldn't transport it, and you couldn't sell it. Prohibition. Now, you learned in Coach Halsey's class last year, Prohibition didn't work. You know why it didn't work? Because Americans ignored it. They ignored it. They drank anyway. It's kind of like teenagers and cell phone policies at school. You ignore it. You have your phones with you anyway. Prohibition didn't work. But for 10 years or so, our government really tried to battle all the bootleggers and the whiskey steel makers and all of those things to keep alcohol away, but it didn't work. Amendment 18 was added to the Constitution to make alcohol illegal, but later on, remember, an amendment is a change, an addition, a fix to the Constitution. Remember, we fixed an old skeleton in our closet with Amendment 13, and we did away with slavery. And later on, we do away with Amendment 18 with a different amendment. So Amendment 18, Prohibition. Now let's go to women. Yeah, because this involves women. Let's go to Amendment 19 here. Amendment 19 is the Women's Suffrage Amendment. Amendment 19, excuse me, it gave women the right to vote in America. Once again, I told you, amendments are fixes. They're changes, additions to the Constitution. And because women were not allowed to vote in our country before then, there was a big movement in the early 1900s to push for political reform and have women gain the right to vote, and rightfully so. And Amendment 19 fixed another skeleton in our closet as America because we didn't allow women to vote before then. Amendment 19 gave women the right to vote because their vote matters just like anyone else. So, women rule. Good job, ladies. Amendment 19. And that is why any of you seniors who are 18 and females, you can go vote in this upcoming election. That's Amendment 19. We're going to skip ahead. We're skipping through some of these amendments, but I told you a while ago that prohibition didn't work. After about 10 years, our country realized that they were spending a lot of money and resources tracking down all these moonshiners and bootleggers. So Amendment 21 was added to the Constitution, and it repealed prohibition. It took away Amendment number 18, scratched it off the books, and it made alcohol legal again in our country. Amendment 21. Now, remember my story about Grandma Garnet Miller and FDR? Well, Amendment 22 was added to the Constitution after World War II, after Franklin Roosevelt had passed away. And Amendment 22 changes the Constitution where a president can only serve 2 terms maximum. That's it. Now, why did that happen? Let's go back in time again to history. In 1928, President Hoover was president. The stock market collapsed. The Great Depression hit. President Hoover took the blame, as any president probably would. When something bad happens, the people blame him and they voted him out. In 1932, the presidential election was won by Franklin Roosevelt. And as you learned in Coach Halsey's class last year, his New Deal programs were working. He was helped getting us out of the Depression. So in 1936, he easily won re-election. So you know that presidential elections happen every 4 years. So 1936 plus 4, let's see, the next election was 1940. In 1939, this crazy guy with this funny little mustache was trying to take over Europe. That's right, Hitler. And America was a little bit worried. They were worried about what was going to happen. They were worried about maybe getting drug into another world war. And because of all the uncertainty, Franklin Roosevelt decided to do something that no president before him had ever done before, and he decided to run for a 3rd presidential term. And in 1940, he won handily. The next election was 1944. We were in the middle of the war by this time. We got drug in. Pearl Harbor happened in 1941. America was drug into this war, and we were in the middle of it, close to victory. And America just felt like they did not want to change presidents in the middle of a war. And Franklin Roosevelt ran again for an unprecedented 4th term, and he won. Now, he passed away in April of 1945 with a stroke or a brain aneurysm. But the fact of the matter remains, Franklin Roosevelt won 4 presidential elections. He served as president from 1933 to when he died in April of 1945. 12 years. After World War II was over, our country felt like we need to limit the terms that a president can serve. And they added Amendment 22 to the Constitution, and a president can only serve 2 terms. Personally, I think congressional term limits should be added to the Constitution, but you know it's going to be impossible to do that because in order to have an amendment, we need 2/3 of Congress and 3/4 of the states to agree, and it'll never happen because Congress will never get 2/3 of their people to agree to term limits for themselves. That's just my opinion, but oh well. Let's move on to another amendment. Amendment 25. I remember 25 ducks in a row. They're all lined up there. See them all lined up? I know you're thinking, what do ducks have to do with the Constitution? Nothing really. It's just one of my crazy tricks to remember Amendment 25. Amendment 25, 25 ducks in a row. This is the presidential line of succession. We felt as a country we needed to add Amendment 25 to the Constitution because we needed to have some type of way to transfer power if the president was incapacitated and unable to perform his duties as president. You know, who assumes power next? If the president were to die in office, who takes over? We all know that the vice president would take over, but after that, what happens? If the president and vice president are gone, it falls to the Speaker of the House. Then it goes to the pro temp of the Senate. And the line of succession goes from there to the secretaries of each of the executive departments, all 15 of them, by order of their creation. Now, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on the presidential line of succession yet, because when we do the unit on the executive branch, we're going to go through it thoroughly then. But all you need to know right now is Amendment 25, 25 ducks in a row. It's the presidential line of succession. Amendment 25. The last amendment we're going to talk about today is Amendment 26. This lowered the voting age from 21 to 18. This happened after the Vietnam War, when many 18-year-old soldiers were fighting and dying for their country in the jungles of South Vietnam. And our country felt like if you were old enough to die for your country, you should be old enough to vote for the leaders who would be making those kinds of decisions. And the voting age in the Constitution, which used to be 21, was scratched out, and now Amendment 26 fixed that and lowered that voting age to 18. That's why some of you guys can get registered to vote and vote in this upcoming election. So we went through Amendment 13, 14, and 15, which were related. Amendment 13 abolished slavery and did away with it. Amendment 14 gave equality and citizenship to all Americans. Amendment 15 gave black men the right to vote. Amendment 16 is the horrible income tax amendment. And my little trick for always remembering that is that you can get your first job at 16 without a permit. You can get it when you're younger with a permit, but at 16 you can get a job without a permit, and then when you get that paycheck, those taxes are taken out. Always remember, Amendment 16 is the income tax amendment. Amendment 17 is for senators. It allows for the direct election of senators by us, the people. Amendment 18 was the failed experiment of prohibition. Didn't work. People ignored it. Amendment 19 gave women the right to vote in America. Go women. And Amendment 21 repealed prohibition and took it off and made alcohol legal again. Amendment 22, a president, like these people behind me, they can only serve 2 terms. Amendment 25, 25 ducks in a row, is the presidential line of succession. And Amendment 26 lowered the voting age to 18. Those are some of the other amendments that are pretty important. We only have 2 vocabulary words that go with this. And the first one is vocabulary word number 13, civil rights. These are rights guaranteed to all U.S. citizens. When you refer to civil rights, it refers to equality and rights that all of us as U.S. citizens have in our country. And the last one, of course, is suffrage. Now, some of you out there might think suffrage refers to marriage. No, that's his little joke this morning. No, it's not. Suffrage is voting rights. So when you talk about women's suffrage, you're talking about voting rights for women. That's where that word comes from, suffrage, voting rights. Well, that concludes our Lesson 2 notes for Unit 2. I hope you took really good notes. You may have to back the video up and write them down. And keep an eye out in Schoology for Lesson 3 video coming up soon. Till then, this is Coach Eads, over and out.